Accepting no is a challenge for any child, but it's especially difficult for children with autism or other delays. In this blog, we're giving tips on how to teach children to accept no. Now, none of us like hearing no. If we want something or are expecting something and we hear no, how many of us then call up, customer service or argue or fight? We don't like to hear no. The difference is that we may have a response to hearing no that is manageable, but some of our students or clients do not know how to manage that disappointment. But yet life is full of disappointments, and we really do need to teach our students how to tolerate no, because it's going to happen. I meet so many parents who kind of tiptoe around telling their child no because they're just so afraid of that explosion that happens after. So what happens? The child gets everything that they want. They're kind of creating their own, utopian world where they have access to anything and everything. But that's not really in the child's best interest either, because they don't understand how to have boundaries. They don't have limits put on them because, parents might just be too afraid to enforce those limits because of the explosion that happens after. So how do we know that a child needs to learn to accept no? Well, usually it's because there's some sort of challenging behavior that's happening. And when we're looking at reasons for challenging behavior, we're going to be recording likely ABC data. We're going to be recording the behavior that's happening and the antecedent that's happening right before. So the behavior is the thing that we want to reduce, but the antecedent gives us information as to what that trigger is and potentially what is the skill that's missing, right? Because every behavior is communication, and every behavior excess is telling us that there's a skill deficit. So if the antecedents were related to giving up preferred items or not getting what they want or not getting their way or things like that, we could still go in with a functional assessment and a behavior plan on reducing that challenging behavior. But it's also going to tell us that if the antecedents all had to do with not getting their way or not getting what they wanted, then we may want to be teaching the skill of learning to tolerate no or not getting what you want. Now, I don't know if anyone else experiences those feelings of frustration or disappointment when you were really expecting something. And it's usually not the time that you want to learn a new skill, right? When you're really upset and disappointed, you don't want someone to then teach you how to just tolerate that. So the best time to learn a skill like this is not going to be in the moment of that major upset. So if your child really, really has a hard time when they are told no because they can't use the iPad, I wouldn't start teaching them in that moment of disappointment when they didn't get access to the iPad. I also probably wouldn't start with the iPad. Don't start with the most highest preferred item. Start with something with a little bit less preferred in a situation that has a little bit less pressure. Sometimes we'll even do contrived practice situations, and we'll tell the student, we are going to practice hearing no. And what do we do when we teach any skill? We practice, we reinforce, we model, and then we transfer it to real life situations. So if you were setting up a contrived situation where they had to learn to tolerate no, start with less preferred items, practice that, model that, practice what the tolerance response is. Is it saying okay? Is it taking deep breaths? Is it choosing an alternative toy or activity? What's going to work for your student or client? And then teach it, model it, practice it, and reinforce it. Even in the practice situations, offer that reinforcement for engaging in that tolerance response, right? We want them for that response to become part of their repertoire, because the more practice that they have with it, the easier it's going to be to show that response in the high pressure situations. So as they start to get practice with that, we also like to do, sometimes it's unpredictable. Sometimes they have to tolerate no, and sometimes they ask and they get what they want. Hanley talks a lot about this type of unpredictability in the tolerance and delay response that he teaches, because life is unpredictable. So we want to include some of that unpredictability in teaching our kids to tolerate no. Sometimes you ask for something and you get it, and sometimes you ask for something and you don't get it. And you're not going to know which one we're going to do. But when you tolerate that, by showing X, Y, and Z, there's something in it for you. So having that reinforcement be there, and then starting to slowly transfer that to real life situations. And if you know a real life situation is about to come up, you can even prime them and say, remember we practiced? So I'm about to say no when you ask me for that. And so here's what you can do, and remind them what the reinforcement is. If your student is not ready to generalize that skill, you can try to avoid saying no by using words like not right now, or you can't have this, but you can have that. And that way you're still avoiding setting off the behavior, but you're starting to put some limits so that they're learning to tolerate no. So the goal is that they do eventually learn to generalize that to the natural environment with some teaching, with reinforcement, and then eventually fading that reinforcement. So we talked about how hard it is to tolerate no, but how important it is to teach our kids that skill, because life is unpredictable and life can be disappointing. So there are some strategies that you can use to teach it, model it, and reinforce it, and then eventually practice it and generalize it. So click on the link in or around this video to get our ABC data sheet so that you can start tracking that behavior and seeing if it's related to needing to learn to tolerate no.